don't know about you, but I want to grow. Like, I want to grow as a person. How many of you here just want to grow as a person? By show of hands, can I see just a little bit? Okay, that's good. Most of you guys. I want to grow as a father. Like, I'm a new dad, and like I always want to like grow to be better at parenting. I want to be a better husband to Kyla. Like, I always want to grow to figure out like how can I figure out how to bless her more, to be a better version of the current thing that I am right now. I want to be a better friend. Like, I hope that by as 10 years from now, I will be a better friend to the people around me than I currently am. Like, I just want to grow. I want to grow in so many areas, but the area that I want to grow in the most, the area that I think, man, if I could actually get this, in the area that I would just man, really, if I could really get this, I think my life would continue to change in ways that I would hope it to be. And the area that I want to grow in the most is being a disciple of Jesus. Like, I want to learn how to follow Jesus better. Like, if you're like me, some days, if you have that desire, some days it's like going really well and it's easy to follow Jesus and I feel like I'm doing a really good job. And other days, I haven't talked to God in a while. Like, I haven't cracked open my Bible in a minute. I don't know if you've ever felt like that. Some days it's like really easy to follow what God has to say about things. Other days, it's like really difficult. And I don't exactly know what to do to get out of the funk that we're in. And sometimes it even like the idea of like, what does it look like to follow God? Sometimes that seems difficult and elusive to find. Because you have this guy over here saying, this is how you follow God. You have this person over here saying, this is how you follow God. You have this person in the middle saying, no, really, this is how you follow God. There's so many different ideas. There's so many different theories. There's so many, sometimes it seems elusive. And more so than anything, I want to be somebody who is just empowered by the Holy Spirit to know more about Jesus. Because I want that to impact my life. I want that to continue to change my life. And my hope for every single person in this room today, my hope is that you would be impacted by Jesus. My hope today is that the Holy Spirit of God would speak to you. Like, the whole reason we gather here is not just to sing some songs and do open mic nights and whatever. The reason we gather here is because we so desperately desire that every young adult here in Huntington Beach would experience the presence and the love and the salvation of God. It's our hope that to become all that God has for us to be. It's our hope that you would meet God if you don't know him yet. It's our hope that you and we would be like the representative of heaven here in Orange County, here in Huntington Beach. That as we leave this place, the way that we interact with people, the way that we respond to things, the way that we act would be representation of Jesus, a representation of heaven. And, when you turn and you trust Jesus, when you accept his invitation to life and to salvation, to freedom and all this stuff, it's amazing. Some crucial things happen that are pretty supernatural. One of these three things happen. The first thing is you gain a new status. Like, your slate is wiped clean. Your debt has been paid. Your new status is you are made right before God. That's what you are before God. The second thing is that you're part of a new family. The new family of Christ with all your brothers and sisters that are imperfect, that stink at different times, but we're trying our hardest to get better and better, to follow Jesus even better than we can before, being led by our Father God. And the third thing that you get when you turn from your sin and you follow Jesus and you begin a relationship with him, the third thing that you get is a new future. And the future and the hope of a transformed life here on earth, as well as living forever with God in heaven. But this transformed life is the thing that I think so many times, I don't know exactly what that means. And I think a lot of Christians may not know exactly what the transformed life means. And so today, we're going to continue on studying this passage in Romans chapter 12. And the whole idea of this passage that Paul is writing to believers, and he's saying to them, if you want to be known as a Christian, if you want to be known as somebody who follows Jesus, if you want to be a representative of heaven here on earth, if you want your life to be transformed, if you want to see God move in your life in a powerful way, these are the things that you need to do. These are the things that will mark you as different. This is the thing, and it says this in Romans chapter 12, verses 9 through 13. We're going to just look at one part of this. In the first week, we talked about the first verse. Let love be genuine. Abhor what is evil. Hold fast to what is good. Love one another with brotherly affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. Do not be slothful in zeal. Be fervent in spirit. Serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in tribulation. Be constant in prayer. And contribute to the needs of the saints. And seek how to show hospitality. This is a pretty big list. And over the course of the summer, we're going to get to what we get to with this list. But the thing I want to zoom in today, dive in today, is the second part of this passage where it says this: abhor what is evil and hold fast to what is good. And this, when you first read this, you may look at this and be like, yeah, of course, you need to hate what's wrong and bad and hold tight to what is good. Check mark, got it. And if you're like me, when you first read this, you probably thought that same thing. Like, okay, I just got to abhor what is evil, hate what is evil, love what is good. I get it. That's good. Move on. But when you stop to think about it, this is one of those things that we as Christians need to pause. And if Paul wrote this to a bunch of Christians, he didn't put it in there by accident. And so what Paul is doing is when he is writing something, even like the mundane thing that, yeah, we kind of get it. What we need to be doing, if you want to like skip over this verse, is you need to pause and you need to ask yourself, man, do I really like abhor what is evil? Am I holding tight to what is good? And here's the problem. So many times, even Christians, we love to say that the evil things sometimes in life will ultimately lead to good things for us. And even if we don't like partake in a lot of evil things, a lot of times we flirt with evil things. And we're like, it's not that bad. I know it's probably bad to be a part of it, but I can hang around. I can whatever, it's fine. But the Apostle Paul is stopping here. And he's saying, listen, if you want to be marked as a true follower of Jesus, if you want to look up your life and compare it to this list and this particular commandment, then let's do some soul searching tonight. And what does that actually mean? What does it mean to abhor evil and to hold fast to what is true? And tonight, I just have three points for you. Three points to see, three points to understand how you can align your heart with God with this topic of abhorring evil and holding tight to good. And the first thing that I think you need to do when trying to determine if you are somebody who abhors evil and holds tight to what is good, the first thing that we have to ask ourselves is this question. You need to learn the difference, and you need to learn how God defines both good and evil. Because you need to put your God goggles on at this point. Like, once you begin a relationship with God, you need to look through everything through the lens of God's word and what he says and his character and his heart. And you need to be super hyper aware of everything in your life to look and see what God would have to say about it. It's kind of like have you ever shown one of your friends a movie that you really love or a video that you really love? Have you guys ever shown anybody a video or a movie that you really love? And how many of you guys have ever done this? You become hyper aware of every single thing about that video or movie. You guys know what I'm talking about? You notice things you never noticed before about this video or movie. There have been times where I had a friend and I showed them this movie that I loved, and I'm making sure that, are you watching? Are you looking at the screen? I saw you looking over there at your phone a second ago. You're looking at the screen. It's really good. This is a really good part. You want to make sure Or that maybe you're just noticing, you're gosh, this movie is slow to start. And you make an apology. You're I promise it picks up. It picks up here in a little bit. Wait till season 2. Season 2 is amazing. Or some people are wait till season 4. I'm I have to wait till season 4. Oh my gosh. But you watch things with a different eye and a different lens when you're watching it with somebody else, don't you? And it's like it changes your viewing experience. You notice things that you never thought you would have noticed. And when you are saved by Jesus, when you enter into a relationship with him and you have the Holy Spirit living inside of you, you should be evaluating everything in your sight, in your heart, in your actions with this heightened sense of a new lens, of this Holy Spirit who's with you, representing Jesus and the person and the character of Jesus. And you should be evaluating everything based on this. You need to learn when you begin a relationship with Jesus what God likes and what God does not like. You need to learn what God thinks is good and what God thinks is bad. And part of your new reality as a new family member, you have a new perspective, a new status, a new future, and a transformed life is understanding what God has to say about life in general. We have to understand that it is God who defines what is good and what is evil. Because there is such a thing as objective evil and objective truth. You know, some groups of people will say that you can't really have objective evil and objective good. Everything is pretty relative. And listen, you may subscribe to that, way of thinking, but can I just tell you, that's unlivable. You can't actually live that way. Because if you're a person who's like, everything is kind of like, we don't know all the details about all the different things. We don't know if evil is evil. It could be evil depending on whatever it is. Could be good depending on whatever it is. It's all relative. If you believe that, then there's no reason for you to think that the Holocaust was bad. Because that was just their perspective at that time. There was no reason to do all that. It's whatever. There's no reason for you to think that racism is evil. Because that's just what one person has to think about this, and it's not a bad thing. Or you can't believe that putting someone down and hurting somebody else is wrong because that's just their perspective. But but the thing is, most people in here, that there are some things that are right and there are some things that are wrong. We know that the Holocaust was evil. We know that racism is evil. We know that hurting somebody else is evil. And even if you don't subscribe to Christianity or Jesus, we know these things to be true in our conscience. And everybody kind of has a different conscience for a lot of different things, but there are just certain things that have been hardwired into us by God, the law of God, which is written on our hearts, to tell that there is a difference. And listen, if you believe that there is such a thing as evil, then you have to believe that there is such a thing as good. And if you believe that there is such a thing as good and evil, then you have to believe that there is such a thing as a moral law. And if you believe that there can be good and evil and is written by a moral law, then there has to be a moral law giver. If you just follow the tracks all the way through, this is what you have to come to. You can't say there is evil without declaring that there is good. You can't say there is good without declaring there is a moral law. And you can't say there is a moral law without declaring there is somebody who wrote it, somebody who came up with the whole thing. And this is what God is saying to us. God has designed this world in a way. Sin has corrupted it, but God is the source of goodness. And what Paul is saying right here is like, you need to know that there is a difference between good and evil. And God is the one who determines what that is. And God has given us a way of living. He's given us a way to interact. He's given us a way to think. He's given us a way to be with other people. And his law is unchanging. Like so many other things in culture, like things now, like 20 years ago, we didn't agree with a lot of the stuff in culture. And I promise you 20 years from now, it will be different. But the thing about God and his goodness is that it never changed. God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And his word is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And if you want to be tethered to something true and immovable and unshakable, then don't be somebody who's just so blown with the wind of this. I think this is okay right now. Or I changed my, this is okay right now. Be somebody who's tethered to what God says right and wrong is. You'll never be able to abhor evil and hold fast to what is good unless you first determine what each of those things are. And listen, God does not hide his opinion on all these things. I promise you, if you engage in his word and you engage in a community of people like this, and you're a part of small groups, and you ask questions that you have, you'll be able to determine what God has to say about the things in your life. So we need to be people who learn how God defines both good and evil. That's the first thing. Number two, we need to believe that good is good for us and evil is bad for us. We need to believe that good is good for us and evil is bad for us. You know the lie of sin is? Do you know what the lie of sin is? Sin says this: every time you have an opportunity to either follow God's way or the world's way, this is what sin will do. Every time you've experienced this, I've experienced this. Sin says this with whatever you're dealing with: I promise you that I will satisfy you in the way that God can't satisfy you. Sin says, I promise you I will give you more freedom than God will give you right now. I promise you that I will give you ultimate goodness, more goodness than God will give you. And the thing about this is that it's a lie. Some of us have experienced the lie that sin brings. You know, one of the main attributes of Satan, the enemy, is that he is a liar. He's a liar. He lies. He deals with lies. He deals with you with lies. He lies to you all the time. There's so many things that he has lied to people about in this world. And he deals with lies. That's just how he does it. And every single time you have an opportunity to sin, what you're doing is you are believing a lie. You were saying that, okay, I think if I do this, I will ultimately, if I engage with this evil, I will ultimately get the good that I want. And we do this all the time. And sin always overpromises and underdelivers. And in Genesis 3, we see this narrative of sin continue. And with the first man and the first woman, Adam and Eve. And this is when Satan is in the garden. Adam and Eve were just created. And what does he do to these people? He lies to them. And he says this. He says, did God actually say you should not eat of the tree of the garden? He questions God. It says, but the serpent said to the woman, there's a couple interactions, and she says, well, if he says, God said, if we eat it, we'll die. And the serpent said this: you won't surely die, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. And Adam and Eve, they believed the lie, and they disobeyed God. And the thing that the enemy promised right here, he couldn't deliver on. You see, the plan of the enemy every single time is to steal, to kill, and destroy. His whole purpose in being is to get you to believe the lie, to follow him, to follow sin, and it will lead to hurt and pain, and it will eventually kill you. And his tactic to do this is to lie about it. He will always say to you, now, did God really say you need to do this? Did God really say you don't need to do that? Surely that's so old-fashioned. Have you ever heard, if friends ever told you that when you try to go God's way over the world's way? Have you ever heard, like, as you declare that, and be like, did he really say that? Is that really in the Bible? That's so weird. Like, honestly, that's so dumb. Why would you ever believe that? That is so, what's happening there is there are lies that are being spread. Like, did God really say that? You won't really die if you do that. Your eyes will be open. God's holding out on you. And the tactic of the enemy is to lie and to say that it's all good when it's not. And this is so important, guys, because if this is the thing that's perpetuated all the time, and it's in propaganda that the enemy uses against us, what we need to know is what going the world's way will actually do. And at James chapter 1, verse 14 through 16, it says this, and we need to be very aware when we're determining how we make decisions and if we're going to give in to certain things. This is what James says. It says, but each one is tempted when by his own evil desires he is lured away and enticed. Then after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And sin, when it is full grown, listen to this, gives birth to death. Don't be deceived, my beloved brothers. James right here, he's like pulling the veil off and saying, listen, I know that so many people in the world will say that it's not a big deal. But ultimately, the reason God says to abhor evil, to hate evil, to run away from evil, is because ultimately it will be the death of you. It may not happen overnight. It may not happen over a decade. But ultimately, if you give in to sin, it will lead to death. You know, according to tradition, this is how old Alaskan hunters would kill a wolf. They would take a knife that was frozen out in the cold, and then they would cover that knife with fresh blood. And they would let that blood harden and freeze on the knife. And what they would do is after it hardens and freezes, they would get another layer of blood, and they would let that harden and freeze, so much so to the point where you couldn't see the knife. And what they would do is they would take that knife and they would jam it into the ground with the knife facing up. And they would leave it out overnight. And a wolf whose senses are so strong would smell the blood, and it would go over and it would begin to lick the knife over and over again. And it would begin to, get the stuff that he wants from the blood, and it would be getting stronger and stronger and stronger, so much so that he would be licking all the blood off to where eventually it would just be the blade. And because of the coldness of everything and the temperature of everything, the wolf would not know that eventually he would be licking just the blade alone, and the blood that he was tasting was his own blood. And then the hunters would come in the morning to find a dead wolf. Evil promises this for you. It promises you good. It says, I have exactly what you need. You're not getting it from over here. I can give it to you. I can give it to you. But it promises you it always leads to pain and to bondage and to eventually death. And the thing about following Jesus is that Jesus wants to set you free. He looks at the death and the sin that we have all surrounding us, that we're a part of. And the whole reason Jesus came to die for us is to set us free from sin. And it's amazing that when we turn to God, we take all of the sin that we've messed up with, and we give it back to him, and we say, God, please take this. I don't have the ability to handle it. And he takes it from us. But here's the problem with Christians. After we've been completely forgiven by Jesus, we often will go back, and we will flirt with evil again. And we won't really abhor it like we need to. We won't really hate it like we need to. And although our security and salvation is set, nothing you can do can break the covenant that God has with you through Jesus. The problem with sin is that it leads to death. It leads to death of relationships. If you mess around with sin, it will hurt the people around you. If you mess around with sin, it will hurt you. And God, he loves you. As your father, he paid such a high price for you. And he looks at you and he's just like, please, get away from sin. You're licking a bloody knife. And you don't know that eventually it will be your blood. It may seem okay now, but it's going to hurt you. And notice Paul's verse, the words that he uses. He says, abhor what is evil. Hold fast to what is good. He did not just simply say, hey, you need to choose evil or choose goodness more than you choose evil. He didn't say that. He said abhor. I don't use that word abhor very much. It's very weird. It's to loathe something. It's to despise something. It's to be disgusted with it. Like, ew, gross. I'm going to throw up if I'm around it. I'm an easy throw-upper. I throw up easy, like it's a problem. When you have a dog and a baby, those are two awesome options to throw up all the time. And it's not great. And Do you know how I interact with things that don't smell very good? I abhor it. And I make sure that my dealings with these things are minimal, and I'm not lingering around in any of these things. I am holding my breath. I'm putting this over my mouth, and I'm doing the thing, and I'm done with it, and I don't breathe until it's done. That's what you need to be doing with evil. You need to be abhorring it, hate it, be disgusted with it, go away from it. Don't even flirt with it. That's the problem that we have. We flirt with it. Maybe we intellectually know that this is not a good thing that we need to do, but we kind of flirt with it, you know? We're just like, what's up? That's fine, no big deal, like whatever. It's kind of like this, you know? Have you guys ever flirted with anything? Anybody before? You know, anybody in this room? That could be good. Everyone just kind of looked like this. I didn't do it. I promise you I didn't. But you know, have you ever flirted with anything? I made a meme. I did something super old, and I made a meme. I have this first meme up here. Can you put it there? This is like you when you flirt. You know, have you guys ever done that? Just like maybe on your bed with like your phone. Like, no, you hang up. You hang up. What? No, you do it. And so we love to flirt. Flirting's awesome. Flirting's great. Appropriately. But listen, so often, even as Christians, we flirt with the wrong thing. And instead of abhorring evil, we flirt with it. And it could be like this, the second meme over here, when you flirt with evil. You know, it says that Satan is like a lion roaring about, seeking whom he may devour. And listen, this is silly. This is stupid. I made this, and I'm like, no way I'm showing this. No way I'm showing this. You see the phone that the lion has? He's on the other line. No, you hang up, lion. But listen, this is stupid. This is dumb. But this is what we do all the time. We flirt with evil, and we know it's not good. And we're like, no. I know he's probably going to maul me, but he's like kind of cute, you know? Like, what? Did he say that about me? No way. That's crazy. They're like, no. He's totally going to eat my face. Like, absolutely. Like, he's going to rip my face off. But, like, he's, like, different than any other guy that I've ever talked to. So it's, like, super cool. It's, like, really fun. But here was what Paul is saying. Get out of there. Stop flirting with evil. Just unfollow those people on Instagram. Unfollow those accounts. Like, delete those numbers. Stop going to the place that you used to go to. Stop doing the things that you used to do, because every time you get close to it, you flirt with it. You gotta get out of there. You gotta do what this next one says. This next one, this is what you need to do when you see evil. Google image is probably like, what is he doing? What is he looking at? Listen, you need to run. You need to get out of there. You need to treat it like a disgusting thing on the ground that you're just trying to not, gag over. You need to be out of there. You need to run. You need to get away. You need to abhor evil. You need to hate it. You need to hold tight to what is good. And this is what Paul is saying. Because listen, sin is evil. And sin, when it is going all the way, will lead to death. And this is why God says to hate it. God hates evil. He wants you to hate it because it will hurt you and it will kill you. And the same things you need to do is you need to run away from it. And number 3, finally, is you need to embrace God's goodness as the only way. You need to embrace God's goodness as the only way. You know, when I read the Bible, I read a lot about a God who is so big and is so powerful and he's so good. And he wants goodness and kindness for all of his children. You know, there's so much discussion in our day about who is important and worthy of goodness. But can I just tell you that right now, if you are in this room, if you are breathing, if you are alive today, then you are valued by God. That God looks on you with such love. He has this incredible picture of who you could be, freed from the bondage of sin that you're in. And he wants you to make goodness the path that you're on. To go his way over the world's way. To go the way of God in goodness rather than evil in the world. And whether or not you feel chosen or not, whether or not you feel worthy to be called a son or a daughter of God, he loves you and he values you. And he knows you and he has a plan for you. And he wants goodness for you. In every situation, we have an option to go the way of God and goodness or the way of the world and evil. And when you go the way of God and goodness, it may not always be easy. In fact, it probably will be difficult. It often will be difficult. It often will be hard. It may look weird or different, but I promise you, you will be surprised with the eventual outcome of going the route of goodness. Because goodness will transform your life. If you continue to make the decision with God and goodness, it will transform your life. One of my favorite stories in the Bible is a story of Joseph. And Joseph was an incredible person. He had so many opportunities. He had a hard life. Like, you talk about getting the raw end of the deal. Joseph got the raw end of the deal for no reason. And Joseph, time and time again, decided to go the way of God and goodness. And this is kind of the overview of Joseph's life. Joseph was so hated by his brothers that they sold him into slavery. How mad do your brothers have to be to sell you into slavery? Like, that's pretty bad. And Joseph, he gets sold into the house of Potiphar in Egypt. And instead of sulking in, his lot in life, Joseph decides, I'm going to the way of God and goodness, and I'm going to work hard for Potiphar. And eventually, he worked so well that he became the head honcho of the servants of Potiphar. Potiphar trusted him with everything. But then Potiphar's wife came on to him and wanted to have sex with him. And kept berating him, being like, come on, sleep with me, sleep with me, sleep with me, come on. And time again, Joseph would say, no, no, no. But if you think about it, Joseph, if you think about him, he's like, man, I've been done dirty. I probably deserve this. I need it. I need this. But Joseph, he decides to not do it. And this is what it says in Genesis 39, verse 7 through 12. After another time where she propositions him again and she tries to seduce him again, this is what Joseph said. He says, how then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? He didn't say right here, how can this is not good for you. This is not good for my standing in this area. This is not good for, whatever. He knew that ultimately every sin is an affront against a holy God. And as she spoke to Joseph day after day, he would not listen to her, to lie beside her, to be with her. But one day, when he went into the house to do his work, and none of the men were in the house, she caught him by his garment, saying, lie with me. But he left the garment in her hand and fled and got out of the house. Joseph, he refused to turn against God, and he did the hard thing when the easy thing was right there. When it was something that you probably desired and wanted, but he did not want to go against God. We need to treat evil the same way Joseph did. We just need to get out of there. It said he ran out and left his garment with him. He just sprinted out. That's a dramatic thing. Can you imagine if you're in a conversation with someone and you sprint out? That's weird. That's a little bit weird. But listen, if you're in a position where you're in a bad spot and you have the option to go the way of God and goodness or the way of the world and evil, the thing that you need to do, quite simply, get out of there. Run. Run, Forrest, run. Move. Get out of there. Do whatever you need to do to get out of that situation. And Joseph fled. But listen, this decision to go the way of God and goodness had a bad consequence because the woman was mad. And she accused Joseph of raping her, and so they threw him into jail. The way of God and goodness is not always going to be a thing that is easy. And going the way of God and goodness does not mean immediate vindication and blessing. But I promise you, it will ultimately lead to your vindication and your blessing. It may not be here on earth, but God will reward you for it. And David's story is amazing. If you haven't read it, he eventually got supernaturally taken out of the pit of jail, and he ascended into the second in command of Egypt, and he saved the whole Israelite people from which Jesus came through. It was unbelievable. But this is what we have to think of when we think of evil. This is what we have to think of when we think of good. Let's not be people who flirt with it. And if you want to hold tight to good and hate evil, we need to remember that God is the one who defines what good and evil is. We need to put our God goggles on in every situation. We need to remember and believe that evil is bad for us and that good is good for us. And we need to believe that embracing the way of God in goodness is the only way. If you want to be a true disciple of Jesus, if you want to be marked as someone who knows God, who follows God, let's be people who are disgusted with evil. We run away from it, and we hold tight to the goodness that God has for us.